Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about Richard Ramirez, who was also known as the Night Stalker. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So the first time that Richard was seen was in 1985, where a woman said that she saw him at a thrift store. She noticed all of his tattoos, his devil eyes, and she just really got this creepy vibe from him. She says that when she started kind of like to walk away from the vibe that he was giving her, he just took a hat and he checked out. So in St. Patrick's Day of that same year, they found his baseball cap in the crime scene. The victim's name was Dale. She was 34 and she was shot in the head. So her roommate, Maria Hernandez, when she got home, she saw him and he shot her. Knocked her to the ground. He pushed her body out of the way, basically. When she ran towards the front door, thinking that he was gonna come out of the garage, he didn't. He actually came out the front door. And so she lifts her hands and says, "Hey, you already shot me once. Do you really need to shoot me again?" And so Richard walks away. After the murder of Dale, there was another murder about a mile from the first murder. It was this Asian girl who was basically janked out of her car for literally no apparent reason. When Maria Hernandez was recovering in the hospital, the police department sent a sketch artist to her, and that's when they realized that it was probably one suspect, because the drawing surprisingly looked identical to a drawing that they had previously had from an attempt kidnapping out of the area of Pico Rivera. 10 days after, there was actually a double murder. This time he got in the house through a window and stole at least $40,000 of jewelry along other things. But this time it was a little bit different than the other ones because the man was actually executed on the couch. Now, what's interesting about these three cases and how they were kind of putting things together is that they were all killed with a 22. What's really scary was the evolution of Richard was just happening so fast, because in this case the female inside the house was raped. He actually cut her eyes. She had several stab wounds. He actually took the eyes with him and then he was gone. But this time there was actually two footprints left at the crime scene, and in so many ways those two footprints were kind of a relief, because now the police at least has something to work with, because the previous time they absolutely had nothing. During this time there were so many child being taken, assaulted, and then abandoned. The report that one of the children who was a victim of Richard gave was very similar to the one that they got from Maria Hernandez, and that's when the police thought, we really got a serial killer. On day 58 of investigating this serial killer, there was another couple who was violently killed. The scene was very destructive. 66-year-old man was shot and his wife was raped and beat. The case took a big jump when they found another footprint in one of the abductions from the kids, because he actually took her to a construction site, and so the print was the same from the one that the police already had. Now, the hardest part about catching someone like Richard was the fact that he didn't have any signature. He was going after basically anybody. He was beating kids, he was killing old people, raping, beating. It was like, how is he even selecting his victims at that point? It was kind of like anybody could have been a victim of his. So later on in the summer of 1985, he entered a house of a guy that was actually from the force, but he entered through the garden and actually left the print so clear that the police was able to figure out the shoe and the brand of the shoe. And tracking it even further, there was only one shoe shipped to LA fitting the description of the size. And even though they couldn't track the sale any further, it was kind of a situation where they would, like, if we find the suspect and he's wearing the shoe, then they would know it was Richard, because it was the same shoe and the same size in all of the crime scenes. After this was when Richard finally showed a signature. It was after the murder of an 80-year-old and her sister. He actually left a pentagram, and he also did the same thing after being pulled over by a motorcycle cop. Now, something that made this case even harder was the fact that LA has so many jurisdictions and so many people were not sharing information that was vital for this case. And because of this situation, they were also not able to take prints from a car that he had actually stolen in time. But in this car, they actually found a little business card indicating that he had a dental appointment, but they had missed him for 5 days. But the x-rays and talking to the doctor showed that his tooth was in not very good conditions and that he was going to be back very soon for the pain. And so they had officers every day in the office waiting for him to come back. But the PD thought that they were wasting money in the officers, and so the same day they removed them, that was the same day that Richard went back to the office. But months after, the PD was able to find a fingerprint from another car that he had stolen in Orange County, except that they actually needed to have a suspect in custody to be able to match the print. But time after, the police discover of this guy that goes by Rick, who has sold a bracelet. And so the girlfriend of who he sold this bracelets to told the PD how to find her boyfriend, who was actually friends with this guy named Rick. Sounded very similar to the guy that they were looking for. Now, when they found this girl's boyfriend, he did not want to give out a name. He basically got, in fact, very aggressive with the PD until there was actually a little bit of back and forth, and he ended up yelling Richard Ramirez. His name is Richard Ramirez. Now, Richard was the kid that never fit in. He was also a thief. He was treated horribly. He had bad influence. He has done cocaine, heroin, and just things that a child shouldn't have done, he did. And so this only goes to show how the way he grew up affected him as a person, how those influences that he had affecting his relationship and his decisions later on in life. But back to the story. With that name, they were able to look up Richard and realize that he was in fact the Night Stalker. And so they were in a hunt for Richard at that point. But Richard got in a bus, and as he was running from the police, people started recognizing him. And so people started hitting on him, and the community got together, and Richard was finally in custody, basically thanks to the community. And after being sentenced to death, Richard Ramirez died of natural causes in 2013.
Richard Ramirez's whole trip was to hide in a tree or hide behind a fence and watch his victims at nighttime and wait into the wee hours of the night. And then, while they slept, creep in, like a coward, and kill them.
The Night Stalker killed at least 13 times, 13 people who were awakened in the night to face death. At least 15 others survived his brutal attacks.
I didn't particularly care for people.
In a rare interview, Ramirez refused to discuss his own crimes, but had this to say about serial killers.
A serial killer comes about by circumstances and like a recipe: poverty, drugs, child abuse. These things, you know, contribute to a person, to a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, he explodes.
Perhaps for Richard Ramirez, that anger and frustration turned to rage, which he in turn took out on his victims. His killings were so sadistic and brutal that even experienced detectives were shocked.
He took a woman in her 60s and stomped her to death with his foot, leaving an imprint of a shoe on the side of her face. From that to just executing somebody upon walking into a room after he entered a house. He strangled, he used a ligature, he used a tire iron on a young girl, beat her, left her for dead.
Would your anger subside if you had to wipe up your mother's blood? I couldn't finish it. I had to leave my brother to finish that chore.
Why on earth would you have hurt those people? Why did you kill those people?
No comments. No comments. I cannot answer that at this time.
What was Richard's motive?
To kill.
That's it?
To kill. It's as simple as that.
Richard Ramirez was raised in El Paso, Texas, the youngest of 5 children born to hardworking, strict parents. Eddie Milam was Richard's best friend back then and remembers when he began to change into a troublemaker.
I did start seeing something going wrong with Ricky Ramirez.